Hello again.
All right.
Hey,
I think it'll work better if I do headphones.
yeah.
I'll go back to that.
Okay, that's true. I didn't think that. Yeah. That's fair. Cool. In this call, we have these tools for drawing on the faces. Can we draw on the faces of the people?
Brilliant. Oh man, I remember when these things debuted. The iPlant leadership call or the cyber infrastructure calls were just ridiculously stupid for like a month.
All right. So we have a few people on the document, but I don't see them on the call yet.
The drop command.
They are just joining.
Screen share.
All right, we've got a few people joining now. I think we'll give a couple of more minutes for some people to join, and then we'll get the call started here at about 5 after.
Excellent.
If you're just joining the call, we're giving it a couple of more minutes for people to join, and we're going to start at about 5 after, which is, in about a minute. If you don't have the Google Doc in front of you, that is probably the best place where we'd like people to add questions down at the bottom, starting at about on page 2. There's a questions header. The link to the Google Doc is available on the Araport developer Google group, but also on the Araport website. If you go to the dev zone and dev calls, so it's araport.org/devzone/calls. There we go. I believe I've added the developer calls website to the showcase panel. You'll have to excuse us. We're still getting used to doing the Hangouts on air. This is the first Araport developers call. We'll definitely be taking feedback on the format of the call and how it works for everybody, what everybody gets out of it, and if people have any feedback, positive or negative, we'll definitely take that into account to improve the calls going forward. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the call. Again, one more time, if you have comments or want to give us a question so that we can respond, please go to the Google Doc. It's available from the Developer Calls page on the Araport website. It's also available in the showcase on the call sidebar. The agenda for today, you can see on the Google Doc right there. Item number 1 is welcome to the first Araport Developers Call. Basically what we wanted to do is try and, with these calls, is really engage the developer community for Araport. People building science apps for the workspace, people developing API adapters with Adama, or people just using Araport in general. Maybe you're just using apps and not actually developing them. Hopefully this can give you a good idea of where we're going, what we're trying to accomplish, and really help people get more out of Araport as developers and as users. The format for this first call that we've decided to go with is this Google Hangout on air. So please forgive us. We're new to using the Hangouts on air. We realize that it's a little more broadcasty and not as interactive as I think that we would actually like. So we're probably going to be evaluating this on our end to try and come up with a more interactive format. But right now, this is the format that we're going to be working with today. On the broadcast right now is myself. I'm Matthew Hanlon. I'm at part of the Araport team at the Texas Advanced Computing Center. We also have Matt Vaughn, who is one of the co-PIs, and Walter Morera, who's the developer, part of the Araport team, and develops the Adama framework as well as other pieces within Agave. Um, so that's introductions. I see people putting their signing into the Google Doc. That's great. All right, so going on to the next item, the big impetus for starting these calls is we have finally released the Science App Workspace into production on Araport.org. That happened kind of silently last week, I believe. So now if you go to araport.org/apps, you see the new Science Apps Workspace. If you haven't configured a custom workspace for yourself, you see the default workspace that we have that has I think 3 apps on it right now. So these are a couple of apps that have been developed by the Araport team and by the community that we have published and available for use for all users of Araport. But you can customize your workspace to create a new one, install your own apps into your Araport sandbox, and then configure those on your workspace, or mash them up with the other community apps that are available there. If you attended the November workshop, you're probably pretty familiar with the Apps Workspace and how to install an application into the Araport Workspace. In the interim since the workshop and actually getting this deployed into production, we have taken the opportunity to make several improvements to the workspace, hopefully making it more stable, the installation process smoother, as well as helping users to, developers when they're installing apps and it doesn't seem to go exactly according to plan, actually giving some insight and information into what happens. If we look when you're installing an application, you're probably familiar with the preparing this application view. So as the back end checks out the application source code and resolves all the application dependencies, there are logs of that process that get generated. And previously during the developer workshop, none of those log messages were available to users. I'm going to attempt here to share my screen, and hopefully everybody can see. Here's an example of this app that I've just installed today. And so this application is not yet ready, but there's a new tab available to developers here, the App Info tab, and if you click that tab, you can see the metadata for this particular app, who authored it, where the Git repository is, the version that was checked out. So this is checked out a branch called MR Hanlon. That's a branch that I've got configured in that repo. Whether the app is published publicly on Araport or not, and then when it was last updated. But the really useful part here is the update logs, which you can see there's a secondary link under here, to where you can actually see the logs that the application, the workspace is generating as it's trying to prepare your application. So we can see for this particular application, we've got an error down here with one of the application dependencies, and I'm not exactly sure what this error is right now off the top of my head, but at least gives me some insight into why the application is not preparing itself completely and becoming available, so that I can then investigate in my bower.json. It looks like there's something up with the data tables dependency that's causing something weird to happen. So hopefully this will help developers to have a little bit more success and know where to ask for help when one of their apps isn't working. All right, I'm going to stop the screen share and return back here. All right. The next item that we want to talk about, and this is something brand new that users who people who attended the developer workshop didn't have to deal with. But we want to actually be able to keep track and know who the developers for Araport are, so that we can better engage the developer community. And so we've actually created a new role in the Araport portal for Araport developers. You can see on the Araport Dev Zone now, there is a big button on the left just under the new developer calls section for register as a developer. We sent an email communication out to all attendees of the November workshop notifying them that we'd like to pre-register them as developers. And so we've done that now, and there are now 30 registered developers on Araport.org. Any user can register as a developer now, though, by going to the dev zone and clicking that register as a developer. And that allows them to review the developer terms of use, and then help us to understand exactly what the Araport developer community is trying to do on Araport, so that we can make sure that the features and the roadmap that we have for Araport, the workspace, Adama, and the tooling that we've built around that is really on target for what the community is trying to do. So that's really hopefully going to help us to stay engaged with the developer community post the developer workshop that happened last November. So that's the Araport developer role, and in order to install applications into your your workspace sandbox, you will need to be a registered developer on Araport.org. But it's free and easy to register, and anybody can do it. All right. The next item that I want to talk about here is the application publication workflow. During we talked about this a couple of times at the November workshop, and just at a high level that we would be allowing apps to be published publicly available to all users on Araport.org. But at that time, all apps that users installed went into a user-specific sandbox. On Araport.org right now, that's still what happens when you install an application. It goes into your developer sandbox, and the application is only available to you. We're actively working to add a integrated publication workflow on the Araport.org portal. If you go to your profile page on Araport.org, which is the page that you get directed to right after you log in, or you can navigate to it at araport.org/user. You can see your apps right there. There is a tab on your profile for my apps. So here, let me add this link right there. My apps tab. And if you've installed any applications into your workspace, that is the place where you can actually go and see them all in a single view. So you can view a list of all the applications that you've installed with links to those app-specific pages that allows you to click on that link and view the app standalone page. And it also provides metadata about the app similar to the data that's on the App Info tab on that apps page. But you'll see the column there for public, yes or no. Some of you may, if you've installed an app, you'll see no for almost all of those, most likely. What we're going to be adding is a link here on the My Apps page for each app, as well as on the app page itself, which will allow you to request to have this application published and made available to all users of Araport. The workflow for that will basically be a web form that just sort of states your intent to publish the application for all users, and a little bit of information about what that will entail. Excuse me. And then that will create a workflow item for the Araport team to actually review these applications. For application publication, the way we're going to handle that right now is Araport team member will actually review the application code. We're not looking to make heavy-handed reviews of what people are doing, because you know what you're developing and what you want out of Araport.org. The primary thing that we're worried about is just some best practices, checking for anything that's obviously malicious, because this is an open platform, and we're hopefully that nobody is going to attempt to make any malicious apps and install them on Araport, but we have to be sure to protect Araport users from that. So making sure that nothing looks out of the ordinary with that app's behavior, and then also checking to make sure that the apps will be following best practices so that they will interact with other applications in the workspace in a nice manner. And basically what this is not in your app HTML, if you have a table and you give it an ID of table, that's just a really generic HTML ID that could cause some weird behavior if other apps use a similar ID. So making sure that things like HTML IDs are specific enough to prevent conflicts. And then in your JavaScript, making sure that the application JavaScript isn't putting a bunch of variables into the global namespace that will clash with other applications. Which, if you start from the app generator template and sort of follow what's there, you're unlikely to be doing that. The app template really tries to keep everything within a nice application namespace and a functional closure for that. But that's mostly what we'll be checking for. We will offer probably suggestions on styles to make sure that the apps fit with the overall look and feel of the Araport platform. But again, we're not looking to be heavy-handed with this. Mostly just if you make the entire background to your application hot pink, we'll probably suggest to change that, just so it has a friendlier look and feel with the other applications on the workspace. And if you follow the UI guidelines, basically using Twitter Bootstrap UI components and HTML classes, you'll get the Araport.org styles for free, because the Araport.org theme is a Twitter Bootstrap based theme. So it's pretty easy to make it look and feel match everything on the rest of the Araport.org portal. But that's the app publication workflow. We hope to have the publication workflow integrated into the Araport.org portal in the next month or so, so that users can actually request these actively in an integrated manner from the portal. Right now, the way it works, if you have an application that you've developed that you'd like to see published and available to all users on the platform, simply send us an email using the contact form on the Araport.org site. On the top right of the site, there's the contact button right now, which sends an email to araport@jcvi.org, which creates a task in our backend tracking so that we can make sure that we follow up with you and work with you to get your application published. I would like to highlight, while we're talking about application publication, on the default Araport.org web workspace, you will see one of the applications available there is the Bar Interactions Viewer. Asher Pasha, one of the developers, or one of the members of Nick Provart's lab at the University of Toronto. Am I right with that, Matt, or am I making stuff up? I think you're muted.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay, I was making sure I was giving credit correctly, sorry. Asher has developed this app. He started developing this app at the November workshop and continued to work with us on it, developing an Adama adapter on the back end to talk to a backing web service at from the Bar Web Services. And then developing an end-to-end application in the front end using that the Adama adapters that they developed. And then they contacted us wanting to see that application published on the Araport workspace for all to use. So we worked with them to do that through basically the same process that I just outlined a minute ago. And we were able to get their application published on the Araport workspace as the first community-developed, publicly available application on Araport. So we are really excited about that, and congratulations and thanks to Asher and their team for the great job that they did developing this application. It's a really cool app and allows you to see the protein-protein interactions from the backing Bar Interaction Viewer web service. So check out that application. It's also, the code for that application is available on GitHub, so you can go check out the code for the application. And actually see some of the stuff that they were doing, and hopefully that will inspire more developers to actually do the same. All right, I don't see any questions on the Google Doc at this time, but I would like to remind folks that if you have any questions, please just type them in there. And we can respond to them. But while there's, and even if there's not a question, if you have a comment, fill it in that spot. That'll work great, and we can respond to those comments. All right, the next item that we have on the list, I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of the development roadmap that we have upcoming for Araport Apps. And the apps workspace. Now that we have the workspace published on Araport.org, it gives us a nice point to start the next phase of development and getting the next set of features in here. The first thing that we're going to be working on is developing an explicit Araport app manifest. And this is going to allow us to do a number of really exciting things, or allow developers to do a number of really exciting things with Araport apps. And this is one of the first things that came up, and then came up over and over and over again at the November workshop. The Araport apps, as they work right now, have an implicit manifest, so to speak, for what makes up the actual source code for that application. That implicit manifest is the three files that are generated by the Araport Science App Yeoman generator. And that's the app.html, and then scripts app.js, and styles app.css. So those three files are the only files that the test runner and the apps workspace honor right now. It became very quickly apparent to us as we were going through the workshop that is while sufficient for some very simple application use cases, for anything more complex or anything that really relies on some popular third-party frameworks out there, it just doesn't work. They need to be able to include additional application assets, and then also, even if you just want to include an image in your application, there's no way to specify specify a URL to access that image from the Araport workspace. There's a couple of ways that seems like it will work when you're using the test runner, because the test runner code is embedded in that generated app, and you can start editing those other files. But if you make any changes to the test runner application outside of the app HTML, app JS, and app CSS files, those changes actually won't work in the apps workspace on araport.org. So you'll find pretty quickly that it doesn't work. A specific use case for this is frameworks like Processing.js, where if you're using the Processing.js framework, your application actually compiles into a .pde file that you want to include in your app to get loaded onto the workspace, the application scope on the workspace to actually render that processing app. And the way it works right now, that just doesn't work. So we're trying to develop a more flexible application manifest where you can specify more specific files to be loaded, and different assets, and how that loading should occur. So we started on the Araport GitHub, and I've linked it here under item 5, the apps manifest. So you've got Araport app.json spec. If you look at the master branch for that that spec, that actually shows you the schema of the current implicit apps manifest. So this is the schema for what an application looks like now to the apps workspace. We've started there a second branch for the beta branch, and this is sort of just a beginning, but is a start to a more flexible application specification, allowing you to specify, rather than a single HTML file, multiple HTML files, multiple script files, and multiple style files. that the workspace and the test runner will all load into the application scope for you. And we're going to be expanding this a little bit further to allow some more generic asset types, so allowing you to specify images, or, as I mentioned before, .pde files for processing support. There are some workarounds that some enterprising developers have discovered for being able to include these third-party assets in your applications the way they work right now. And this is actually a really great workaround that that people have discovered, because it will be fully forward compatible. So as we continue to develop the applications workspace and this app specification, if you do one of the a workaround like this, it won't break going forward. But basically, what some people have realized is that you can package these additional assets that you need, so images, script files, PDE files, even processing script files, into a Bower package, and that Bower package, you can use the Bower.json specification to point to those additional file assets, additional application assets, and the workspace will load those for your application. So that's a pretty neat workaround to actually allow use of some of these frameworks like Processing.js or hosting images or additional script files in your application without having to wait for us to get this apps manifest deployed into production. But if you want to follow what we're doing on that apps spec, or if you have feedback, this is an open source community project. We really encourage and want feedback on what you'd like to see in this specification and how you'd like applications to work going forward. Open an issue on that GitHub repository, submit a pull request with your own suggestions, and we're definitely open to that, and even encourage it, because getting the community involved in what these apps look like and how they work will just make the workspace and the entire platform better for everybody. All right, the next item here is the upcoming development items that we're working on right now for the Adama data API adapters. So I'm actually going to turn it to Walter here for a second, and he's going to talk about some of the upcoming development items for Adama.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Yeah, on the Adama side, we are working on essentially a lot of improvements on the user experience and some improvements on reliability. But what I wanted to mention today is the very soon release of the documentation for parameters in the adapters. So it's going to be essentially a way to extend the metadata that developers are writing for the adapters. The developers that have used this probably remember the metadata.yaml file where you declare the name of the adapter, the type of the adapter, and other different pieces of information. What we want to add now is a way to specify the parameters that the adapter is going to set. The type of the parameters, whether they are mandatory, optional, default for the parameters, and so on. So we decided it's going to be a subset of a very well-defined spec that people are currently using for defining HTTP services that is called Swagger. So we are going to use the Swagger version 2.0. We are going to extract a subset of that spec, and we are going to added to Adama. I think it's going to be very easy. It's very clear how you define each parameter. The fields that you want, that you have to fill, are very, very, very easy and very natural to to use. So it's probably going to be very, very easy. And the nice thing that is going to generate automatic documentation for the adapters. I added a link to the document where you can see right now the automatic documentation for Adama, for the endpoints where you register the adapters, when you take status of namespaces, and so on. The idea is that this is going to be extended for each adapter that provides the parameter documentation, with the documentation for what parameters it takes. So it's going to allow the developers to discover, given an arbitrary adapter, even if you don't know what it is, who made it, what it's going to supposed to access, you should still be able to know the parameters and do, for example, a sample query, because it's going to have default and it's going to have a specific type for each parameter. For example, whether it's a gene locus, whether it's an integer, whether it's a string, and so on. I think that's the big change that we want to push for Adama 0.4. The current is 0.3. And the other big change that we want to mention is that we are developing also a kind of SDK or development library for the developer adapters, for the developers who write the adapters, to have a really easy way to write those. For example, it will provide functions already made for doing queries to previously registered adapters, to do queries to external services, to transfer provenance about the data from where it comes, provide attribution to those. And you will be able to use it on your local machine when you are testing the adapter, and of course on the Adama service when the adapter is registered and working on the Adama service. So those are the two big changes that we want to probably coming on the next month or so. And of course, again, like Matt said, any feedback, any bug reports about the current services or any issues are more than welcome, and feel free to poke in the GitHub in Araport /Adama, and we are really glad to address those. I think that's for Adama.
All right, great. Okay, cool. Well, that has gotten us to the end of the agenda that we had for today. We're a little bit ahead of the hour, but that's all right. I wanted to, just following on to what Walter was just saying. It's probably worth pointing out the couple of ways that you can actually get help. When we were at the developer conference or the developer workshop in November, you had the entire Araport team standing over your shoulder, so it was very easy to ask for help. But obviously, we're all back to our home institutions and working at different times, and so that's not an opportunity. So how to get help? There are a number of ways that we can you can interact with us to make sure that if you're having trouble, if you have an application that's not installing, or you think you found a bug, anything like that, we definitely want to hear from you, right away. Please don't just think that it's just me or nobody will care. because we definitely do very much care. And I think if you ask for help, you will find that the airport team, myself, Walter, and anyone else on the airport team will be very eager and prompt to follow up with you and help you through whatever issues you're having. But where to get help? So obviously, the developer Google group is a great place to get help. I posted a link here to the developer Google group. Please post a message in there, start a thread, ask for help, give us, even angry feedback, even for what's not working, because we definitely want to make sure that the developer experience is great, and you guys have success in developing apps and Adama adapters. Another good place, obviously, is on the GitHub. The source code for the apps generator, the Science App Workspace, Adama, and then a great number of the apps that we've developed and made available on the workspace already is available on the Araport GitHub, and you can find that. If you want to open an issue, feel free to open an issue, even if you're not really sure that that's the right place to open the issue.
Yeah, Matt, if I can say something, I really want to stress that point. Yeah, don't feel shy about opening issues on the GitHub list. We can always tag it as questions or whatever, and at least we have a paper trail of the discussion, and it's very easy to link to code when it's very technical. So yeah, don't be shy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Open issues, we want to see those. I posted a second link under the Araport GitHub for araport.org/open source. If you go to the Araport GitHub, you will see that we have a great number of repositories, and it can be overwhelming. And if you're not really sure what repo you'd like to open an issue under, or if it just gets a little bit overwhelming, we've created this open source page on araport.org to try and provide some organization and structure for what you'll find on our GitHub. So you can see on that page the main repositories that we have for the app infrastructure, a number of example application repositories, the Adama data infrastructure, some adapter repositories, and then the portal infrastructure in general. So any of those repositories, if you want to link to them directly and open the issue there, that's a good place to do it instead of trying to navigate the several dozen now, I think, repositories that we have on the Araport organization. Excuse me. And then Vivek added here at the end of how to get help. Obviously, araport.org at JCVI, or araport@jcvi.org. Send an email to that email address. And that is the email address that if you click the contact button on araport.org, that sends an email to that address as well. That will create a ticket for us in our back end. Everybody will see it, and then somebody will follow up. And we try to be very prompt, less than a day at least, to get back to you and say, hey, we've seen this, and try and help you out. So those are 3.5, 4 ways to get help as an Araport developer. So we really encourage you to ask for help. Please don't stew in frustration if something's not working. Tell us when it's not working so that we can fix it. All right. I think that's everything. So I give one more chance for people to leave questions, comments, or other feedback. Um, you can just add them right there under the questions heading. Um, I will hang around here on the call for till the end of the hour to answer any questions that people add. If people think of something after we're finished talking here, um, or I've added my email here up at the top of the attendees list. Feel free to send me an email. Although I think sending a following one of the ways to get help, the developer Google group, opening a GitHub ticket, or sending an email to araport@jcbi.org is probably better than emailing me directly, simply because more people will see it, and there's a higher likelihood that somebody will get back to you quickly. Although I will not ignore your email if you email me directly. All right, I think that's it that we have for the call today. I'd like to thank everybody for attending. This has been really good, and dealing with the learning curve on our end here of hosting these calls. Please give us some feedback on the call, on the developer group. If you attended the call, there is a thread for today's call on the developer Google group. Here, I'm going to add it here in the comments. That's the thread for today's call. Please leave any feedback that you want either there or on this page here, and if about the format of the call. Was it great? Was it horrible? Was it just mediocre? We'll definitely try and improve this on our end, because we want this to be a more interactive experience, and I think having the on-air and then the separate Google Doc is probably not the best way to do this. And so we'll see about making this a more interactive experience for people that attend the call going forward. But again, thank you to everybody who joined us on the call today. And I see that it looks like everybody, or almost everybody, signed in on the attendee list, so that's great. That allows us to know who's here and sort of again better engage with the developer community at Araport. So thank you very much, and I think we're done. As I said, I'll hang around, and if anybody has any comments or feedback, now is a good time to get immediate response. Otherwise, we can do an asynchronous communication through the Google group or GitHub issues or email. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Okay, folks, I'm ending the broadcast. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.